Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Ashley, this is going to be amazing. I'm so excited to talk to you about the stuff we've been talking about. I keep hearing different pivots from you in really exciting ways that we can engage together. But really quickly, mic check. Everybody can hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. Ashley, you're there too?
Here I am.
Hey, Ashley. So how's it going on? And occasionally, Ashley and I are going to play a bit of talk show host where Ashley will call out. We do have some material to share, and she'll call out and we'll pop stuff up. And bear with me if it's laggy or anything like that. We'll get it together. Um, so as Nora said, my name is Lewis Smithingham. I am Director of Creative Solutions for MediaMonks, which is a deliberately obtuse title. I tend to be a sales-oriented creative technologist. It's the best way to think of me. And a big part of my remit is around broadcast and figuring out ways that, to be honest, we can tell stories with fans and for fans and with brands in new ways. And as part of MediaMonk's core philosophy, I'm driven by a desire to make, to be honest, cool stuff with cool people. And Ashley and I think, share that value. Ashley, so what's your technical title?
So I technically have an obnoxious title as well. So I lead NBA music and culture on Mountain Dew. And I've been on the brand for 2 years. And in that time, I've had the awesome responsibility of owning how Mountain Dew, the official sponsor of the NBA, for those who don't know, come to life. So whether it be communication, so social, digital, TV, commercial, at retail, and then experiential, which is kind of shaky right now. So it's really more about fan engagement. And so whether at marquee moments like All-Star, Tip-Off, or through talent partnerships like with Zion Williamson, Joel Embiid, or Asia Wilson from the WNBA. So that is what my obnoxious title covers.
Amazing. And as of late, I think you've mostly been focused, you are focused on Mountain Dew. And I guess the question I would have is, so as part of this, how long have you been in your current title, and how did what was that journey like, and how did you get to that point?
So it was a really interesting story, but before I go there, let me tell you a little bit about what attracted me to Mountain Dew. So it's a bold and unique brand. It's a neon green soda, and it's definitely not afraid to be that, which is kind of that badass energy that I loved. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but so now.
Well, you've started it, so now I can too.
I know, right? I opened it up. So this brand has always been an instigator brand. Things like leaning into skateboard culture before Pharrell or Supreme made it cool. Partnerships with emerging artists or brands like Complex before it was mainstream, or Network, right, as it hits that peak. So those are the things that I really loved about the brand. It was very non-traditional. And so over the last 2 years, or I should say 2 years ago, I was actually on the Pepsi team, and my predecessor who led the partnership was moving on. And frankly, I went right up to the former VP of Dew and told him that I was the best person for the job. And I was the best person to own the NBA partnership, not because I was a sports fanatic, but actually because I wasn't. And I know that's kind of very sacrilegious to say on this women in sports marketing panel, or this women in sports marketing palooza day. But I think if anything that you guys take away from this conversation today is that sometimes what is your deficit is actually your greatest asset. And so I'm a girl that actually came from beauty. I used to work at Estee Lauder. I kind of grew up in that realm. Switching to not only PepsiCo, working on a soda brand where I went from a $40 product to a $2 product, that's a big difference. But then also going to a brand that is so immersive, so culturally relevant, again, very different from beauty. So while I loved watching basketball games with my dad or my family, I'm definitely not the one that rattles off like all the stats like hardcore fans do. However, again, that lack of experience not only gave me a really big learning curve and got me to the place I am now, but it just was a really fun experience getting here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think that sort of different perspective is, to be honest, what drives innovation. It's certainly what drives me as well. I come from feature films and VFX, and to be honest, got bored of that structure and came into advertising in part because I wanted to do cooler stuff. And so one of the things that I've seen, knowing your work, is a lot of the stuff you do is so at a core driven by innovation. What sort of things have you seen? And you're, again, the beauty story is so amazing because it's such a different perspective, but you're still creating a consumer product. And so how did you use your perspective to drive innovation and to do things that are a little different?
So, I mean, I think unique perspectives are key. And so when you have a lot of unique perspectives in the room, kind of out of that tension and out of that discussion becomes, grows something great. But at the end of the day, or I guess I should say, at the beginning of every unique, innovative piece of work, it has to really be grounded and start with a true insight. So something that is very simple and that is very permeating. And I think when it comes to NBA, even though I'm not that avid sports fan, you have people that aren't, but still love the game. So you have people that are sneakerheads and love that part. You have people that love the competition. You have people that love the celebrity and the showmanship. And so the NBA, I think, is a perfect example of a platform that's so much beyond a sport. It's really a culture, and it always has been. And that confluence of music and talent and sports really creates something bigger. And so that's what I really focused on and started to build this new platform on.
So I think we actually have a clip of one of these recent projects you made. I think it's around the All-Star games. Do you mind if I show that?
Yeah, let's flip to it.
So let's see if this works. Fingers crossed here. Cool. So here we are. It's in vertical, so it may play back a little bit weird, but let's see.
I don't know if there's sound. I can't hear anything, but I can talk over it. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
go for it. Yeah, I can hear you.
So there should have been sound. Unfortunately, there's not, but we're just going to go with it like everything else in 2020. But basically, so at All Star, we created this concept that started with the true insight of the NBA has avid fans and Do has avid fans. And that is really where we started to find the richness and how we could weave these two brands together. And so again, the NBA having an avid fan base and the Do Nation coming to All Star, what does every avid fan want? They want access. And when it comes to sports platforms, specifically these marquee moments like All Star, it's kind of always about exclusivity. It's about who got the sneaker or who didn't, who was at the party and who was not. Just experiential events. Like, do you know someone at the door or are you standing outside? And so what we did here was we really flipped that model on its head and really granted access. It was about inclusivity and inclusion, but really bringing those fans to the front seat, having them be a part of the weekend, not only from a passive standpoint, but actually taking part of it and creating the culture itself. And so we had everything from celebrities, athletes, musical guests, we had exclusive drops. It was a 3-floor immersive experience that went through the entire 3 days where fans could really have fun and have experienced those moments with people that they don't normally do. But then also just create their own fun moments with their fans or their friends. And so that was, I think, the innovative piece, again, with this idea or this insight of giving the fans what they want, granting access when they normally don't have it. And that's what made it so special.
I think one of the things that you do that's really spectacular with that piece is if I had a dime for every or a dollar for every experiential event that's essentially a bunch of posters inside of a shipping container, I'd probably have close to $50. And I think what's so great about that is you create a thing that's not just a social media background, but is in fact a place to go and a thing to do. But I guess the one thing I'm going to call out is like, hey, as we acknowledged a second ago, it is 2020. And I don't think this would be doable anymore.
Yeah, 2020 is definitely different. It's coming with a different energy. We're all just kind of trying to stay afloat. But I think a couple of examples. So one, maybe we'll share it. I don't know if the sound is working on that one. But I hate to say it, but we were a little prepared for this moment when it came to our TVC. And so everyone normally uses television commercials to have these really scalable moments. To really build awareness. And so you normally have these 15 or 30-second pieces of creative that run during halftime or during a commercial break of a game. And it's a great way to get your message out there. But to be honest, like who's kind of all like glued to their screen watching commercials, right? And so this idea of we're not only going to do a commercial, but we're going to add to the fan experience. We're going to enhance value or give value to the fans. So in this TVC, we actually natively released GIFs for fans to use at the same time that this TVC launched.
And so unfortunately, I don't think audio will work, but do you want me to start playing it while it's going?
Yeah, just play it and I'll talk over it.
Perfect.
And so we leveraged Joel Embiid, one of our national athletes, and he's in this really quirky scene. And it's basically this idea of even when he's watching himself play, he wants to interact and he wants to engage with his friends. And what's the funniest and the best way to interact right now? It's to send gifts. That's like the amped up emoji, right? And so we created these gifts and put them out so that, again, we weren't just saying that we were the NBA sponsor. We were actually enhancing the fan experience and natively becoming a part of their daily conversation. And so that's what was so cool about it. And that's what kind of lives on even when my beautiful All-Star activation couldn't happen in the world right now.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And it's this thing where what you're doing here is you're not just playing on one media, but you're playing across multiple platforms. And also, in a very important way, you're going to where the fans are. Now, the next thing I want to bring up is that, funnily enough, we realized while we were prepping that we've actually worked together.
We have.
I'll present another bit that sort of shows, and again, bear with me while I get these lined up, that piece of work. So for the last month, MediaMonks has been working with a major telecom to broadcast the NBA in VR. We've done 15 games. This is one of our cameras. It's a weird angle because our crew shot it surreptitiously. And what's really exciting about this image and what we've been seeing for 15 games straight is this audience brought into the space. In fact, I had crew members being like, hey, why can't we be in the background there? And so Ashley, can you tell me what's going on in this picture?
Yeah. So you can see kind of along the side, it looks like Jumbotrons. It's basically a large screen with these like many different squares. And so Microsoft Teams, the new other official partner of the NBA, they had this really great opportunity of how can we bring fans into the bubble. And I think Caroline, who was talking before us, made a really great point that in this digital moment, in this moment where everything is different, it actually gives way to new opportunities. And so this Microsoft Teams opportunity where it brought fans in basically on their own Jumbotron. And so now people that wouldn't be able to sit courtside normally are. And not only are they sitting courtside, they could be sitting next to a celebrity. And so I think you have like a Lil Wayne clip. We did not book Lil Wayne. I don't want to get sued by saying that I did. We didn't. I thought it was really cool. And this is a moment that, whether he asked to be there or not, whether he was planted and paid, I think the girl sitting next to him is totally psyched out.
She's losing her mind.
And this went viral. And so these are those really fun moments that are starting to pop up that weren't there before. And these are great ways for brands to engage, to lean in and give fans, whether they be avid or casual, new experiences. And so that's what I really loved about this. But I think Carolyn totally made the point, like, we need to lean in here.
And one of the things that's so great about this as well is like, and this is something we always ask our clients is like, and our creative directors to think like, hey, it sounds stupid, but what we're making, does it suck? Would you engage with this? And if the answer is yeah, it's not good, and no, I wouldn't do this, you probably shouldn't make it. And totally. So this is a thing where like, I would do this. This is rad. Like, and people are having actual fun. I remember there was 2 nights where there was a dog, and there were multiple dogs showing up in the feed over a couple days. Distracted the players at one point, which was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. The litmus test for every marketer should be like the cool shit test. Like, is it cool? Would I do it? Am I into it? Would I use it? Like, if I don't want to do it, then I'm not going to put it out there. So I think at baseline, everyone needs to be thinking about that. And then also one other point that I wanted to make. So I work for Mountain Dew, and it's my job to get the most value out of that NBA partnership that I pay a pretty penny for. But this is Microsoft Teams. I had no branding in this whatsoever, and we still did it. Obviously, at first look, it was kind of like, oh, like, where's my like logo bug? Like, but I think we have to start shifting our perspective, because what we did with this was we gave our frontline employees, so people that have been working day and night when COVID started and really wouldn't have a chance to have this awesome courtside experience, possibly sitting next to Lil Wayne or not. But we gifted it to them. And so that was some way that we didn't broadcast it, but it was a way that we could say thank you to people that, you know, needed to be thanked.
And one thing that you touch on there, and it's something we're seeing brands do more and more frequently, is to de-risk projects by collaborating. And this is very similar to the way features work, where you bond a feature by bringing in different investors. And so seeing, you know, Microsoft doesn't make a soft drink. And by seeing that, you know, seeing that partnership come together is really amazing. I think one of the other projects that you've mentioned before, and where, again, going back to the, is this rad? And this is another project you did with FanDuel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So in this new world, we're all looking for better ways to engage and more meaningful ways to engage. And sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to look for what people are already doing and kind of what's growing already. So legalized sports betting is a big trend that we're seeing, right? That's no secret to anyone. And so one thing that I've been really keen on is finding new ways that we can engage with fans and meet them at a place where they're already doing what we're doing. But again, we're just enhancing that. And so we actually just launched this week. This is a free-to-play game where each night fans can pick fantasy lineups. Again, it's free to play. And with that, if their lineup, someone hits a three because we sponsor the three-point contest platform, the fan automatically gets entered into a chance to win virtual meet and greets. So Ray Allen could be like in your living room from your laptop saying like, hey, what's up? Or autographed merch or cash prizes. And so that was a really exciting partnership that we did with FanDuel that, again, fans are already betting. Why not just like meet them there and make their experience better?
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I just realized that we've been doing some thumbnail stuff incorrectly, but everybody's been seeing it. It's great. I just switched over to you being the presenter, so you're center stage. One of the other things that you hit on briefly there that I'd love to dig into is this massive shift in demographic that we've seen, and the getting to places where we're seeing where the viewers are and reaching to where they are. You know, one thing we saw right at the beginning of COVID, that Travis Scott did an amazing, huge event on Fortnite, and that reached 23 million people, which, if that were a real physical event, we would be up in the range of religious pilgrimages in terms of the number of people in attendance. And not that I'm making a Beatles joke there, but like seriously, it would be a huge amount. And while we're also seeing audiences grow, we're also seeing audiences change and shift. And I guess as part of that, and as the world shifts, what advantages are you seeing as a woman of color in this new landscape?
Right. So, I mean, that was a very loaded question. So let me just try to decouple that. You're throwing hard ones at me, Lewis. So first off, I think it's really important to call out that we're not living in an analog reality anymore. So me as a Black woman living in New York City, the things that shape my experience and my views, it's not right outside my door, right? It's social, it's digital. There are a lot of inputs coming in. Similarly, for someone that could be something completely different, a white male living in the middle of the country. And so I think it's really awesome because social or digital has democratized kind of or broken down barriers, I should say, and allowed people to not just be influenced by what they immediately see, hear, or touch, but now they can find these bigger tribes, right, out in the world, or out in the cloud, I should say. And so as a marketer, we're not focusing on demographics, we're really focusing on attitudinal behaviors and kind of figuring out, you know, how people feel, how they want to feel. how they perceive themselves again, or how they want to be perceived. And you have all of these very different groups of people forming these really awesome tribes together when they're not physically together. And I think in this world of COVID, as we all get used to this new norm or this virtual reality, that's only going to become stronger.
That's amazing. And one of the things as well for this, and we've talked about this a bunch before this call, and I think it's hit on this. I think one way, and you have a much better way of saying this, but one thing that brands need to stop thinking about is sort of like, how do we get stuff from people, and what can we provide? And much like your Microsoft Teams event, like, that's rad. I would want to do that. Can you talk about this new relationship that we're forming with consumers?
Yeah, so I think consumers are super sophisticated right now. There's so many inputs that they're giving or getting, and so that makes them actually ask more questions. So not only what as a brand can you give me, but what are you doing? What's happening behind the scenes? Are you consistent? And so I think that puts a lot of ownership on brands to kind of act in this new purpose-driven or very meaningful way, and it shifts the thinking as a marketer or as a brand owner from what I can get from consumers to what I can give to consumers. And when you have that dual way relationship or dual path relationship, where it's not just me pushing something out, but it's a conversation, it becomes so much stronger. And then you start building these real brand evangelists that will stick with you forever.
Yeah, I think there's some funny stuff. I with brand evangelists there. I've actually seen do streetwear brands as well, where that's bizarre advertising and that's building culture. How are you working? And to tie this up before we start going into questions, how are you working to build culture as a brand?
Yeah, so I mean, in my title it says like NBA, music, and culture. Let me be very clear. I'm not here creating culture. Like, there are people that are much cooler than I am. I think it's really about finding those moments in culture that you can help amplify, or being a platform where these people can come together and continue to do what they're already doing. And so that's kind of how I see it. When it comes to All Star, what we just talked about, so what we've done from a do side, so we're all about doers, and I mean, I guess that's a joke, right? But no, it's D-O-E, like not D-E-W-E-R-S. But we're all about people that love action. And so specifically, when we have an awesome platform like All-Star Weekend, and you have these like emerging artists that are just trying to get their line out there or have a new colorway that they want to share, we actually partnered with them and gave them our stage. And so Ruigi of Rude, we actually did something with him 2 years ago. Eric Emanuel, we've just Don C. We just did this year, and then we have an awesome drop happening next week that I can't preview or say anything just yet. But from a Mountain Dew standpoint, it's all about leaning into culture, and again, not creating it ourselves. We are not the keepers of culture. It's about giving the platform and handing the mic over to someone that doesn't have the platform themselves, and just helping them in their journey.
That's really interesting. So I guess right before we go to questions, because you keep bringing up these amazing things, how are you working with that sort of brand philosophy in terms of influencers and in terms of engaging with microcultures that you're creating?
So I mean, influencers are, in a world of social digital, I think influencers are very important, but we're starting to move away from these macro influencers like a Kim Kardashian, and more towards these micro influencers where there are tribes, and they have these really meaningful connections with the group that they have. And so as a brand, it's important to have scale. So you have to have a proper mix of both. And it's not a perfect science, it's an art and a science, but influencers do play a role. But I think it will be really interesting to see how that role evolves, as everyone now is in their own space and technically has all of the abilities to come an influencer themselves.
Okay, last question. Sorry, because you just made me think about something else. Sorry. And if people want to start posting questions, we'll start taking them in a second. So looking at all of these different pieces, I would say one of the things that is a core thread between these is, to be honest, a fair amount of risk taking. And to be honest, like you're putting people up on a giant wall in an NBA broadcast. You're engaging with free to play gambling. You're posting GIFs. Like, I mean, it's all rad and it's super cool, but like there's a lot of stuff in there that like I'm sure my lawyers would probably be like, what are you doing there? Like, how do you find this line where you're threading between risk, which ultimately often means cool, and brand safety?
I mean, that's a really interesting question, and I'm going to tread lightly because anyone, anyone on my side coming for me. But I have a very good relationship with our legal team. They probably talk poorly behind me when I'm not
Same here.
right. But no, I think brand guardrails are really important. And how I was saying that Mountain Dew is this bold, very unique, very badass neon green soda. We stick true to that, whether we have a Heartland promotion or an NBA promotion that skews more urban. And so I think in this world where there's a lot of risk, I think it's that much more important to be very clear about what your brand stands for, who your brand is, who your brand wants to be, because brands are ever evolving. This is not a static thing. Um, and being consistent about it. So I know that's not a perfect and complete answer, but I think it's really about being very clear on your brand's North Star. And for Mountain Dew, it's about backing the badasses. It's about people that take action and do. And so if that could come to life in many different ways. And so if it really hits true to that, we'll basically make it happen.
Okay, that's amazing, and that's kind of the sort of the philosophy we go with, and particularly offsetting risk a bit to making others creating that content is a way to do it as well, which we see here, and it's fascinating. So I'm going to start throwing in some questions. So when it comes to communicating with your consumers, how do you think about brand purposes, and how does that impact approach, or how does that impact your approach to marketing?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think we've kind of covered it a little, but I'll just be super clear. I think brand purpose is incredibly important, especially in today's day and age, especially in 2020 when there's a lot in flux and there's a lot of discourse happening for good reason. And so I think it's again very important to have a clear brand purpose and then weave it into everything, whether it be a simple Instagram post, a large scale activation, a television commercial. It all has to make sense.
How do you keep that genuine though? Like, and how do you add a layer of authenticity, which I see in all of your pieces? Like, there is authenticity. While it has that brand philosophy, it still feels authentic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the insight, like the insight of granting fans access, like it could be access to anything. But it's that idea of we're going to remove a barrier for you and we're going to give you this platform, this stage, and like enhance what you already wanted to do. And so I think that's how you kind of weave it together. But again, I think, my answer today could be something totally different. A month, 6 months to a year from now, just because everything's changing so quickly. So I think outside of just being purposeful, it's about being empathetic. It's about being aware. And it's just about, being open to not only what you want to give to your consumer, but what your consumer is looking to get from you.
And one thing to that as well, in the age of COVID and shifting behaviors, how do you allow audiences to have a tactile relationship with a brand still, without being able to have experiential?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all virtual. And I think we're all just figuring it out day by day. So we have awesome partners at FanDuel. We have our awesome partners at Network. We media relationships. I think, it really is going to focus on the media piece and how we can connect through screens, whether it be one screen or kind of the 8 screens now that people operate on.
And do you think that teams And organizations that engage highly with philanthropic endeavors are more likely to be inclusive. This is another audience question.
So sorry, there was a
Sure.
little.
Sure. Do you think that teams and organizations that engage highly with philanthropic endeavors are more likely to be inclusive?
I think, that's a tricky question, because that kind of implies if I just give money, then I check the box. And so I feel like that was a sneaky question. So I don't think that is the case. I think it's really about not only talking the talk, but you got to walk the walk. So for Mountain Dew, and this is kind of separate from what I've been doing on NBA, but we just launched the Real Change Initiative to help rectify the racial injustice that's happening, or that has been happening and very prevalent in our country. And so it's about not only removing barriers for entrepreneurs and giving a specific amount of money to entrepreneurs, but really pouring in resources and assets to HBCUs, so institutions that wouldn't have gotten or haven't gotten that funding or just that opportunity before. So it's not about just donating, it's about donating, making a connection, and following through until the mission is complete.
Well, I think that also plays into the authenticity you discussed earlier, in the sense that, like you said, just throwing money at a thing isn't authentic. It's just like you can't buy your way out. I guess, and to that degree as well, it's another audience question. Did you have a professional mentor early on in your career? And if yes, how did that relationship impact your journey?
Yeah, so I've had so many mentors, but as well champions, and I'll tell you the difference. So a mentor is someone that you have a relationship with, that you have an ongoing connection with, communication. It could be someone that is your peer. It could be someone, but a lateral peer, but in a different department. It could be someone that you report to. It could be someone above that. And so for me, my mentors have taught me so much, and it hasn't necessarily been about like the functional role, but it was really about making me more confident in my style. My style of like being a Black woman in sports, or in any scenario, even when I was in beauty, and being confident about that. And so my mentors really helped me develop my style to get to this point. However, a champion is also something that I think is very important. So a champion is someone that is a little removed. You know them, but you don't have an ongoing relationship. However, they know about you, and they are willing to speak in those very high up rooms about you and vouch for you and kind of have that pull and pull you up through the organization. So, it's all about being prepared and really like delivering on the job. But if you don't have that pull, or if people don't really like you, or if people can't vouch for you, then you're going nowhere. And so I think it's really important to not only have mentors, but also to have those champions.
Yeah, I really appreciate that distinction. I think it's really important. And as we look at breaking down some of the nepotism that exists in my industry and the sports industry, I think engaging with champions and mentorship is such a huge part of all of this. I guess another question that came up is, if you could give your younger self a piece of career advice, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough question. You guys are tough today.
Yeah, it's a rough one.
I know, right? So I, when I was on the Pepsi team, I had a commercial role, and so it was very numbers forward. And frankly, I wasn't that into it. I literally thought I was going to quit. It was the worst experience. But getting through my mentor got me through it, and I literally learned so much. And I think what that taught me, my younger self was just scared of the unknown. It was scared of failing. And so I think what I would tell myself, my younger self, is that it's okay to fail sometimes, or put yourself in situations that you don't feel comfortable, because it'll unlock something so much more. And kind of how I started this, of like how I basically marched up to the VP. I didn't do that. I was way more tactful, but I was confident enough to be like, you know what? I know I'm a little outside of the roundup who you're looking at, but like I'm going to kill it, and this is why. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without that confidence and having a moment where I thought I was going to fail and actually like succeeded.
I think having access to mentors and all that is a big part of like being able to have that confidence and being able to fail safely. I know
Mhm.
certainly for myself, like it's been like not having that where they're just voids if I didn't have that. Now off topic, but on topic of the larger piece. Another question is please provide an example of the dual path relationship relative to the Mountain Dew brand.
Yeah, so I mean, I think social is a like baseline example of how we continuously have this ongoing conversation with our consumers. So specifically, when you think about social sentiment and monitoring that, like we put something out, and you don't just put something out and then like let it go and like don't look and never come back. You put something out and you see what people are actually saying under it and respond. And so we've done that on all of our social posts, especially when we launched the Real Change Initiative. I think it was earlier this month, because that was new for us. That was new for lots of brands, and so we wanted to hear what people had to say, and we again wanted to reaffirm our commitment to the plan that we had put out there. So I think that's a very simple example of kind of that dual path relationship. It's basically just communication, two-sided communication.
As a final question, I guess, and this is coming from me, is where do you see, we talked over the course of this, we've talked about finding culture, we've talked about serving rather than just taking from consumers, we've talked about making stuff people want. If we put all of that sort of stuff together, what are we making 5 years from now? I know that's super, super loaded, but like how, I guess, how do you see content and brands and ad and marketing flowing into the future?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is going to be informed by our consumers and kind of what happens like immediately, like within the next year. We have a lot coming up, right? At the balance of 2020, we have the election, et cetera. But I think, uh, frankly, if brands are just empathetic and continue to listen and pivot and evolve, because brands don't have to be this stagnant thing. They have to stand for something and have a clear purpose, but I think they can evolve. I think that's what will really inform how brands come to life in the next 5 years. So I think honestly, it's going to be a lot of virtual moments. It's going to probably be, now that people are more comfortable in their home or spaces that they're like curated, it's going to probably be brands playing in that space. And I think that would be the future. But you know, something could happen that could totally change. And as long as brands are seeing how it's changing, we'll be prepared.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been really helpful. And again, it's been a total honor to be here and speak with you. And with that, we have Nora Hendrickson in Sweden to take us home.
Hey, in Sweden, where we used to, record MBA on VHS, if there was somebody like in school who actually had that subscription of the pay TV that showed MBA back in the 90s or late 90s. Anyways, that's because it is such a strong brand, and it's like such a strong brand here in Europe as Mountain Dew is as well. And thank you so much for this. I'm so happy to work with one of you at least. From all those talks, it's so nice, you talk about like when you kind of talk about, is this cool enough? Would I engage with this? Oh my God, we had many of those calls, Louis, didn't we?
Yeah.
But actually, I was also actually inspired just to kind of go back to the whole kind of, inspiring each other as women, which I think like sometimes is useful because like having a network, there was a time where I had no network and I felt like I was the only woman at the web network. I didn't feel alone at the time, but when there suddenly was a female network, I understood how much I probably would have appreciated that from the start. So I just wanted to say to you that I'm so inspired of you talking about like not being a sports nerd. And there were other women in this summit today that talked about that too, because I don't know if you agree, but sometimes I think like women are more self-conscious about being like not knowing about who scored in that game 20 years ago or whatever. Do you agree?
I completely agree. And I think it's such a fun time right now, or interesting and fun, because now like women are realizing that we don't have to play by the rules that the boys made. We can actually write our totally different rules and it doesn't matter. And so I completely agree, but women are very self-conscious. And I was growing up, whether it be in the beauty industry or when I first came to PepsiCo. And so having very strong women around me, so my VP, Nicole Portwood, my senior director, Erin Chin, they've also helped me really blossom because they've poured into me. And so when someone does that for you, like you have to keep paying it forward. And so as we have this more inclusive landscape, I think it's only up from here.
Yeah, I believe so too. Thank you so much. It was so inspiring. So happy to have listened in. Let's move on to our next session, who will be with Jamie Christ and Liz Pavitt. And Jamie, she is currently the Director of Athlete Marketing at Under Armour, where she leads the global strategy for run and training categories. So she's working with professional athletes, influencers on events, partnerships, and more. And she actually played a big role in transforming awareness for Under Armour Run, turning that brand